So as I'm recording this, this is happening down there in the House of Commons. They're practicing social distancing, of course, so there's only a few of them down there at the moment on camera, screwing you out of all your rights. UK Parliament debates Emergency Powers Bill. This is going on at the moment in the House of Commons. MPs have started debating a new law to give emergency powers to the UK government to tackle the coronavirus outbreak. I touched on this the other day. Here they come to take your rights away. Among other powers, the bill would allow officials to shut airports and detain people on public health grounds, while immigration officials could place people in isolation. This is not good. This is from Netpol. This afternoon, the government will seek to push the Coronavirus Bill UK through Parliament, giving it extraordinary emergency powers for the next 2 years. Today, I can report that it's now 6 months this bill is being proposed on, that they're going to vote on today. It's going to go through. Let's face it, it's going to go through because they're all politicians and they're all useless. They're not there looking after you and me. They're there looking after themselves. And if they're in the Labour Party, probably Israel. So it's 6 months they have downgraded it to, not 2 years. 2 years was too long, but any erosion of your rights, even temporary, is a bad thing. Netpol say this: it is understandable why frightened people support handing the government sweeping powers to detain, isolate and test potentially infectious members of public in quarantine facilities. But let's talk about what that means in practice. Oops. In the worst times in a crisis, we only have to look at public indifference to the spread of COVID-19 in filthy, unhygienic prisons to see how much of a priority sick people in detention are given. This is what they're saying now. We'll just open the show talking about prisons and talking about how they're just a hotbed for infection. And now you're talking about detaining more people who were just suspected. These are emergency powers. There is no indication about what legal rights you might have if detained, and even the government admits it expects calls for strict limits and safeguards against abuse. But instead it wants these powers for 2 years with few, if any, safeguards. Like I say, they have downgraded it to 6 months now, which is good. But I'll get to that in a sec. They continue. Our concern is these powers become really alarming when the number of infections drops substantially and the crisis seems like it is receding. At the point, the same fears driving demands for new powers want to hunt out potentially sick people posing a, quote, threat to public health. You can see how this will be abused. It will be abused. There's no doubt about it. It will go through and it will be abused. I am going to be doing videos on the abuse of this in the coming months. I know I am. Detention powers are then used disproportionately and in a discriminatory way, targeting communities with higher incidence of positive testing seen as a, quote, risk. We've seen this kind of racism already. It can act as a driver for tougher action by police. In America, the Patriot Act was a temporary measure. That was what? 2002, 2003? It was 2001? Around there. It's been around nearly 2 decades. Nearly 2 decades. And it's been used to wage regime change wars around the world to this day. How many people has that Patriot Act killed around the world? How many human rights violations has that Patriot Act been involved in? It was just something that was an emergency back then. It was just an emergency. Everybody voted for it. You were unpatriotic if you didn't vote for it. That's why they called it the Patriot Act, for Christ's sake. You were unpatriotic if you voted against it. And only one person did. And to this day, it's been used to wage war around the world. Whatever rights they take away from you today, temporarily, we won't be getting back tomorrow. Or to put it in the words of Benjamin Franklin, who said this: "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." For those of you that have been cheering this on, this erosion of human rights for a little bit of safety because, the virus, I want you to remember that in 6 months' time, when they extend this bill that they're voting through right now, and they will vote it through, and I want to remind you of it in 2 years, when those rights that you said were only temporarily being taken away, and don't worry, we'll hold their feet to the fire, when you still haven't got them back in 2 years. But then, if you really do think you've got any rights at all, let me take you down to London. I'll introduce you to a guy called Julian Assange in Belmarsh Prison. You'll find out all about how many actual rights you really have in this country. They can take them away from one person. None of us have them. Careful what you wish for.